Capital, they say, is the bedrock of any country economy. Joining me on the show today is Dr. Innocent Odey, a human resource expert, as well as someone who has been in a classroom, as well as in business school, teaching people on human resources and human capital for importance, benefit to the economy. Dr. Odey, very good to have you on.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure having me.
All right. So now to start with, Doc, when we talk about human capital, a lot of people normally confuse it with human resources. Can you help us, break that gist of what is human capital in itself?
In a nutshell, human capital has to do with the potentials of the human beings. Because when you talk about capital, what is capital? Capital means different thing to different people. Capital in the money market, capital means money. So the human being has a potential to be able to bring out a lot of resources from the human person. So human capital has to do with the potentials of the human being.
Very interesting. I think quite explicit. Yes. Human capital has to do with the potential of
human potential of the human being.
About that potential, a lot of people have asked the question in the Nigerian case.
Yes.
Have we been able to tap into that potential, particularly in the area of economic development, because our focus is on the economic aspect of Nigeria?
Yes, Nigeria have not been able to tap from the potentials of the human capital. Why? Because why is our economy going down? Why are we importing? Because we are a import dependent economy. Because we have neglected the human capital. We have neglected the potentials of Nigerians. Nigerians have about 200 million. Why is China becoming an emerging economy of the world? Because China invests a lot in its human capital. When you go to China, their educational system, their curriculum is focused on creativity, creating things. You see, most of what we use, our computers, our electronics, our gadgets, they're all imported from China. These are creativity from the capital market, from the human capitals in China. So we think we can, as a country, we can develop our human capital using even the private sector. The human capital is untapped in Nigeria. It's really untapped.
And Doc, when you talk about it is untapped in Nigeria, it brings us back to the question of issue of our curriculum, because as rightly pointed out, in terms of China, they work on their curriculum and they have a situation whereby that curriculum gives them the advantage to have what they have today.
Now it's look at the foundation. When our colonial masters, the Britain that brought in the educational system to Nigeria, the educational system they brought was to get clerical staffs, people that will help them in administrative work in the office. They did not bring in that technical education, that skill, that technical education that will help Nigerians in developing technology. The educational system is from the foundation. So we need to tinker with our curriculum to make sure that we also encourage technical education. Not only having certificates and degrees, but we need to encourage people to develop skills. A lot of people now, after graduating from the universities and the polytechnics and the colleges, don't have skills, and they roam around the streets. A lot of people with their master's degree, with their BSc, with their bachelor's degree, they roam around the streets without skills. So having the degrees is good. We need to also inculcate that skills in our educational institution. We need to bring in skills. Well, I remember when my late father was alive, he told me a story that he wants me to learn how to farm. So that if I go to school, if the school fail me, the farm will not fail me. Thank God the school did not fail me. So what I'm trying to say is that we should tinker with our curriculum to also add skills, acquisition of skills. When we are teaching our students on their various fields, we should teach them a skill. There are many skills we can teach the students.
But before I get to the level of the skills that we can teach our students or teach our young ones or teach our youth, there's this aspect that many people normally argue that we don't even budget enough money.
There is no enough budget for the educational sector. I heard the news about yesterday that the federal government released about 50 billion to ASU. It's not enough. Why do we have brain drain? Why do people leave the country? Because the educational system is not well funded. When you look at our universities, for instance, if you go to most of the universities, the project you see there, they are tech fund. They are tech fund. These are intervention agencies that are trying to build in one or two structures in our universities and our polytechnics. Without the tech fund, our educational system, our university will be in shambles. There will be no infrastructure. So we need to invest more on the human capital. We need to invest more on our educational system, because when we invest more, you see, there is a saying that said, "What you sow is what you reap." If you sow little in the educational sector, that's what you get.
It's true. Now, talking about investment, because that kind of investment, we already know that government push in money. Like, for instance, in 2025 budget, it's close to $1 trillion that government is budgeting for education. But at the end of the day, by the time you critically look at that revenue, that money coming to education, you discover that the one that is going to recurrent expenditure is higher than capital expenditure. So how can we balance this spending?
We can balance this recurrent expenditure and capital expenditure. Even look at the country budget, for instance. More is onto recurrent expenditure. Let's say 20% to capital expenditure and 80% to recurrent expenditure. So we need to balance this. We need to put infrastructure. We need to get our institutions well equipped with a lot of equipment. We need to balance it. So how to reduce the percentage of recurrent and capital expenditure is that we need to look at what we want. What is our target? Our target is to improve the educational sector. And when you put more on recurrent expenditure, the capital expenditure will suffer. So we need to balance it. We need to give 50% to the capital expenditure and 50% to the recurrent expenditure.
Now, talking about this particular aspect, because I've had the opportunity of interviewing people on this human capital aspect, particularly narrowing down to the economic development.
Yes.
And from your angle, everyone is talking about how to invest more in human capital.
Yes.
But let's take it this way.
Yes.
In the case of China, they have invested so much. But there's an aspect of investment they are doing that we may not be able to understand unless we also maybe copy it and practicalize it. Science and technology.
Yes, that's why I talk about science and technology. No, we focus more on theoretical education, which is good, but we need to go into skills. That's what I told you. We need to get our graduates, after graduating from our universities and polytechnics, let them have a skill. So if for instance, somebody graduated from the university and has no job, he has a skill, he can fend for himself. Let us produce graduates that be able to create something, create job. No, let us not produce graduates that will be dependent. Graduates that will depend or we're looking for depend on their certificate. Let's create graduates that will have skills. When they have skills, they develop that skill. They can also employ people and create something that will develop the economy. From their skills, they can develop. Let's say a project, they can develop something that we can export. And for the economy to grow, we need to export. By the time we export, that will strengthen our naira. Because we develop our local product and we export it. From our universities, the projects, we can invest more in technology. Like for instance, when the graduates from these universities and polytechnics develop their projects, we can use those projects and sell them and export them, thereby also promoting our export, which will strengthen our naira.
Very interesting. But we have a challenge, which I also know that you also have an understanding of. Currently now, our young ones are writing JAM.
Yes.
And from the data of JAM, there are about 2.2 million of them writing.
Yes.
When we take a percentage of those people writing JAM, less than 30% are going for science and technology courses.
Yes.
How can we encourage this ones?
We can encourage science and technology. Catch them young. We can encourage it right from the cradles. We can encourage them right from the play class, the nursery. We can encourage them. Like I develop a system on using animation to teach students science. There are a lot of things we can do to attract students to science and technology. It's attraction. For instance, when you see something that you like, it attracts. So we need to bring a lot of things that will attract people into science and technology, and that is the way to go. That is the way to go. Because we don't develop capacity, we don't develop equipment, we don't develop material that we can export. That will not make us go anywhere as a nation. Our nation will become a dumping ground. See, a dumping ground. We will still depend on importing. That will not help the economy.
Very interesting, Mr. Dr. Odey. And I also like to quickly point out that in the regards of this particular issue that we're looking at, recently, the federal government not just the federal government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, even previous government have concentrated on ICT technology. Currently, they are training about 6 million youth on iDice. iDice is one of the ICT development around coding and the rest of them. But there are other aspects of scientific that we are not seeing government presence in. But everybody is looking at ICT. But do you also share in that sentiment that ICT is the way to go? Because the people have said that it is only ICT that you see that it is penetrating every other sector and beyond.
Well, ICT is good. ICT is good because cutting all the spheres of life, there's ICT there. But ICT is not the only way to go. ICT is good. We need skills. We need to develop materials. We need to produce. We need people that will be able to produce. Let's assume we need people that can produce radio. We need people that can produce television. We need people that can produce handsets. We need people with technique. We need people that with that skills that can, when they do it, ICT will also complement. The government is doing much in ICT. They need to do more. They need to encourage people. They need to bring attraction. That's so that we attract people to go into science and technology, which is the way to go.
And I know the reason why I brought that question was that there are other skills aspects that federal government is neglecting. I will have to point it out.
Yes.
For instance, I was discussing with someone recently and he said that, do I know that most of our building skills experts are coming from foreign countries?
Yes.
From Ghana, from Togo. And I quickly pointed out to the person, we have technical college that's also be training people on medicine.
Our technical colleges have gone.
To them.
Our technical colleges have gone. You know, it is attraction, as I've said. It's attraction. When you make the colleges, our technical colleges attractive, people will go there. But when we make it less attractive, you see that the people don't go to technical colleges again, they are gone. So we need to revive our technical colleges. We need to make it attractive. We need to give like a incentive to people going to colleges. We can give them maybe little allowances and some other things that will encourage people to go to the technical colleges. And that is the way to go.
Interesting. I've been speaking with Dr. Innocent Odey, Director of Innobec Business School. He has helped us to understand the aspect of this innovative human capital aspect that we're talking about. But going further into this discussion, we also need to look at possibility of solution, because we're not just going to hammer on the challenges alone. We also look at the way forward, what to do, how we also expect government to do. Let's start with this. From the individual parent perspective, how can parents show to their children that human capital is very interesting, and not just human capital that you obtain in schools alone through the degrees, but the other aspect of human capital, like what the Chinese is doing. They are training their children on AI right now. And it's not necessarily be on the four wall of a school, but they are training them outside the four wall of a school. Just like you rightly pointed, the attractive nature of AI teaching to Chinese children. But in our own way now, how can we make sure that we also make human capital development attractive to our children, catching them young?
Number one, the government must develop an incentive program. For instance, those that want to go to technical colleges, as I've said, we give them small incentive, like we give them small allowances. And if parents are aware that children going to technical school are being given small allowances, it will encourage a lot of parents to send their children there. So that will also propel parents to send their children. It is what we see. It is what we see. But when we see something that's attractive, it attracts parents. So government should develop an incentive program, giving small allowance to all those that go to technical schools. That will encourage more people to come to the technical schools.
Very interesting. That's the aspect of parent. Now, the private sector is also very, very key in human capital. We know that most of them normally organize training for their staff, but beyond the four wall of the company, beyond the four wall of a corporation, outside there, can they do human capital development at the CRS for Nigerians who wish to train on that aspect?
You know, private sector depend mostly on their income. For instance, I have a school. I know how much I pay my staff salary every month. So the government needs also to encourage the private sectors, not only taxing, because for instance, the government cannot employ everybody.
Definitely,
the government doesn't have the capacity to employ everybody. If, for instance, now I stay in Nyanya and the government want to employ everybody from Nyanya, the traffic will be too much. So the private sector is very important also for this economic development. The private sector is very important because the private sector also do the what we call the social problem of the society. Because if somebody has no job, it will lead to social divide. So the private sector is played a very important role in job creation, in creating job, because the government need to encourage private sector. There are several ways the government can encourage the private sector, because the government, depending on government alone, it will be a very big burden on the government.
Exactly. Now, when we talk about the government, there are 3 layers of government in Nigeria. We have the federal, the state, and local government. Let's start with local government.
It's just recently the Supreme Court granted autonomy to the local. We all know what is happening in the country. But when government, I'm coming. When government, the state government is hijacking the funds that belong to the local government.
Exactly.
For instance, the state governor, maybe the allocation going to local government is about 3 billion. The state government will hijack the 3 billion in the name of joint account and give the local government chairman 3 million to go and pay salaries. Then what can that local government chairman do?
Dr. Odey, I understand that aspect of the political economy intrigue within the Nigerian economy sector, particularly how we have mismanaged our local government. But we also need to set agenda for them. Now, for the local government, a lot of us do what we call rural-urban migration.
Yes.
For instance, most of us are supposed to stay back in our rural area, have that technical knowledge, then the local government can tap from our human capital expenditure and develop the local government. But here we are, all of us are in the cities.
It's a Nigerian problem.
Okay, let me take it from
the founding fathers of the country, they did a very beautiful job. The 3 tiers of government: the local government, the state government, and the federal government.
Exactly.
If the resources going to local government is well managed, people don't need to come to Abuja. People don't need to come to Abuja because number one, security, issue of security. The reason why people leave their local environment, we know what's happening in Plateau and some other places. Anyway, the people staying in their villages will be attacked, and a lot of things. So number one, we need to tackle the issue of security. Number two, the fund going to local government, the local government autonomy should be implemented, so that the local government will have their funds now draw out their programs on how to carry out, because if the local government carry out their own human capital development in their own small locality, and the state government carry out their own development in their own state locality, then the federal government, being the father, carry out, then there will be accelerated development from the local government. People don't need to come to Abuja. If they have electricity in their village and they have security in their village, people don't need to come to Abuja. So people will be comfortable in their village. So this is what we need: accelerated development from the local government. Number one, security should be there. If security is there, number two, the local government autonomy should be fully implemented. First, going to local government should go to the local government. Then we can now put eyes on local government and say, okay, local government, we are giving you 3 billion. Let us, how are you managing these funds? We can start from there. If we do that, there will be, as people will reduce the issue of rural-urban migration, because a lot of people will not come to Abuja. They will be comfortable in their village, because now coming to Abuja, a lot of people are paying house rent of 1.something million, 2 million. Some of them, they left their villages. A lot of houses there, a lot of houses are in the village. So with this, we can have accelerated development.
Now let's focus on state, because I won't isolate these layers. We have been able to help us out on local government in terms of how they can bring about human capital development in their various localities. Let's now look at the state government also. We have 36 state government. Okay, if you include FCT, making 37. But for the state government, we have seen some cosmetic arrangement kind of empowerment, and most times they mistake or misinterpret that empowerment as human capital development. Imagine giving you somebody bike, keke to ride. They refer to human capital development, or giving someone a grinding machine, although we are not ignoring the fact that these are also very laudable, but the core aspect of it is what is missing.
Like something I heard somewhere that a state governor was giving wheelbarrow to people to wheelbarrow. That is not empowerment. We need a lasting. We need something that is lasting, something that is durable for a long time. The state government has a lot of role to play. The state government also, because these local government are in the states. And we have the state capital. The state government can play a supervisory role in all the local government. Not saying that the political because most of the state governors are, controlling the local government and removing one chairman, putting the other chairman. That also is also a problem. It's also a challenge, because if we allow the state governor to have over the local government, the local government will not have any progress. Local government will have their own autonomy. Then the state government can also complement. There are a lot of ways. Those of you are talking about technical education, technical colleges. The state government can also be technical colleges. The state government can also give incentive to people going to technical schools and science colleges. By giving incentive like that, we also encourage people to go. to go to the science, the state government can do that. The federal government can do that, because education is in the concurrent list.
Exactly.
Both the state government, the local government, and the federal government can have universities, can have polytechnics. So when the state government does that, it will also improve our human capital.
Exactly. Now, talking about university, you have mentioned, under 2 years of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, he has established 76 universities. Although some are merged, some are converted from college education, and some are also converted from tertiary polytechnic to university. But people are asking the question: are this also form of bringing about human capital development?
Now you say we have over 250 million Nigerians. Creating more university is good, but some of the reasons of creating these universities is some of the motive is political. It's political, because when you look at some of these states, let's assume a state has already 4 universities, 4 federal universities, and we are creating more universities in those places. So I look at some of those universities created by this administration as political moves. We don't need to be political. We need to look at the country. We need to look at the population of the country. 2 million people writing JAM in the country. How will we be able to look at those universities, the existing one? Will those universities take them? If those universities do not take them, we need to create a balance where you can accommodate more students that will be passing out from the secondary school. Not creating universities on political patronage. Yes, you have brought university to this place. Now we employ new staffs. No, we need to look at, there are some states, there are some areas that need universities. We give them. But there are some areas that there are more universities in those areas. That is draining the economy. That is draining the economy.
Exactly. And talking about draining the economy, there are some of those universities that are specialized universities. But
wonderful.
But experts, very well. Experts have also cautioned that some of them are not specialized as expected. One of such university that was created is University for Maritime Activities that is in Delta State. But there's one particular one that was also created for the purpose of another aspect of a specialty. But people are now asking the question that they are yet to address the specificity of our human capital challenges. Take, for instance, we don't have those universities that will train people on how to manage our mining sector as expected. We still have informal mining sector that is being manned by artisans. So what do you have to say about?
Yes. Creating specialized university in some instances is good. For instance, the universities of medical sciences is good, because we are short of medical doctors in Nigeria. So when we create universities like of medical sciences, is good. That will help us in bringing more doctors, because a lot of doctors are migrating, leaving the country. So by the time we have enough doctors, it is good. But some of these specialized universities, they need to be looked into. Some of them need to be merged. Some of them we need to carry out assessments of this university, this specialized university, some of them. Like we talk about the Maritime University in Delta State, I'm also you should close the one in Delta, no. But we look at some of these universities, we assess them, we give them assessment. There can be assessment from the Federal Ministry of Education, assessing these universities and looking at them for in the long time. Some of them that are not doing their core mandate should be merged.
I really agree with you, because the particular university that is called Federal University of Science and Technology, and it's offering accounting courses, and people ask the question: you see, are they still on their mandate, or they're out of them? Because the core issue is that when we talk about this specialized human capital development, it should be focused. It should be focus driven. But we don't have that. For instance, we have a specialized university called University of Transportation in Katsina State. But how good is that one from your own perspective? To me, some of these specialized universities have said they need to be merged, because we look at, for instance, transportation. Transportation can be run in one of these our conventional universities. We can put a faculty of transportation there. We can create faculty of transportation in most of our universities. Why creating a university for transportation? Because already there is an aviation college, a special aviation college to train our pilots, which is very, very sensitive. But when we can create faculties of transportation in most of these existing universities, to me is one of the drain of our resources. Exactly. But going forward also into this discussion, we cannot leave out the international perspective of some of these issues we have raised. We have looked at the way China has been able to develop the human capital to suit their economy and make it better. We also look at the way the UK, United Kingdom, the US and other European countries have been able to suit their human capital to make their economy much, much better and more robust. And recently we are hearing a lot of trade war here and there, Donald Trump bringing high tariff and the rest of them. But guess what, Doc, I've been able to notice? It is the human capital aspect of those countries who are now responding to American trade war or tariff hike that are now responding positively to it. Guess what? China, for instance, is one of the biggest exports to US. But here in Nigeria, what are we exporting to US? Less than 10%, less than 10 products we are exporting to US, but we are not gaining more. But I discovered that human capital of China has helped China to be able to withstand the tariff coming from US.
Just as I've said, China invest more on their human capital. The human capital of China is what is pushing China, and that's what's pushing the economy, because we have more people producing. And one, you see our infrastructure, just as we talk about power.
Exactly.
You know, in China, the cost of producing goods in China is less. It's less. I've taken the statistics. It's less to produce goods in China than producing in Nigeria. Recently, I made a survey to buy this cable wire. Nigerian cable wire is costlier than the one produced in China. Why? Because one, they have the human capital. Number two, cost of production is less. They have power. They have the production. The production in China is less. But number two, in Nigeria, we have less human capital. We have less power, and making the production cost to be high. So you are talking of tariff. That has helped China to be able to caution the trade war between China and the present administration of US, Donald Trump. So human capital will go a long way to be able to help us to bring out goods that we're able to produce to export to other countries.
Very interesting.
They are helping the balance of trade.
Exactly. Now, and Doc, before we have less than some 5 minutes to round up the show, but taking a deeper look on the educational sector is also very important. You are educational also, and looking at your assessment so far of our curriculum, your assessment so far of all the universities that were established, Polytechnic and the rest of them, and looking at the activities of JAM these days and WIC and the rest of them, what do you make of all these activities, both government institutions and the private institutions that are all putting together our educational?
I didn't get your question. Comment.
Now, what I mean is your assessment of educational activities in the last 10 years.
Let me just 10 years. In the last 10 years, the educational sector has not really engineered the Nigerian economy. It has not really engineered the Nigerian economy. Though recently we have a lot of private universities coming, it's good. When we have private sectors coming, it's good. Just as I've said, that the government alone cannot absorb all the students being the student of the country. For instance, look at the public schools, the public primary and secondary school. For instance, in Yanya, how many primary schools we have? Government primary school. Let's say in Yanya we have 3 or 4 public schools in Yanya. What's the population of Yanya? Can those public schools be able to admit all those? They cannot admit all those students. So the private school need to come in to be able to partner with the government, to be able to admit, to take in a lot of students. So the private sector is very, very important. The government, as I've said, the government need to support the private sector. Number one, some of these taxes need to be reduced. Like for instance, we have what we call property tax, we have what we call tenement rents. All to all these private schools. This need to be reduced because the private sector is also playing a very crucial role to develop the economy and to help the country to absorb.
Now, let me sorry for cutting, but talking about the tax, already there's a tax reform bill that is trying to harmonize all the tax payment.
I pray they harmonize it.
The House of Reps have already passed the bill. We're waiting for the Senate for a concurrent and the rest of them before they take it to the President for sign. But the tax also is very important. But we have also mentioned that it is very expensive to have a human capital that we also desire. So if government doesn't tax, where would they get the money?
Government can tax. We are talking of double taxation. We are talking of excessive taxation. You kill the business. Most business we close because of excessive tax. Government need to generate revenue from tax, yes, but the tax need to be harmonized. So if you are paying tax, you should be able to look at your expenses, look at your expenditure, because number one, let's assume now the school is also creating job for some of the teachers that were not employed by government. The school is also paying salaries. Look at all this income. All this contribute to the economy, because if these people have no job, they will constitute a social nuisance to the society. So the private sector is playing a very great role and should be encouraged, especially our private institutions.
Exactly. Thank you so much for that submission. Now let's also look at the other aspect or international dimension of this human capital. India has been known to be one of the greatest countries that have been able to develop human capital and export it. Can Nigeria follow suit by exporting our human
Nigeria can do that. That is why I told you some of the universities that are established, they are okay, they are good, because it will help us to bring a lot of human capital that we can export. In the past, we have a lot of Indian doctors in Nigeria. We have a lot of which other country again? I would say they come to Nigeria, teachers. So we can have more human capital. We can export it. That will also be also one of our commodity we can export, because human capital is also very important, very vital. When we export our human capital, they will go there and also contribute and bring in foreign direct investment to the country.
I really love that. When you say foreign direct investment, just recently CBN announced that what we got in terms of remittances from our brothers and sisters that are outside the country working is over $2 billion. And in the last 10 years, we have been able to generate over $20 billion from remittances. So what Dr. Odey is saying is, I quite agree with him, because remittances is coming. Now, as we round up, Doc, and taking a leap at what you are doing at in terms of as an educationist and what others are doing, what future do you see for human capital development in Nigeria? Let me say in the next 5 years.
Well, it's what I see. There will be an evolution. There will be an evolution. If the government can encourage the private sector, those I have said, they can encourage the private sector by, number one, harmonizing the tax. Number two, encourage by providing the basic amenities like electricity and good roads. Because most of our institutions are in the bad, the roads going to those institutions are bad. The government can improve the infrastructure. When the government do that, we're not saying the government should come and give private sector money, because it's a private business.
Exactly.
Government come and give private. Government can improve, number one, the infrastructure, can improve the electricity, and reduce and harmonize the tax. All these things will be a booster to the educational sector, the private sector.
Exactly. Very interesting from Dr. Odey. It's very passionate, and the way you are putting your submission is quite interesting. I know many of our viewers will definitely agree with Dr. Odey that definitely the private sector is a key member of building Nigerian human capital. It's not the federal government, state government, local government establishing university here and there. Human capital is beyond that, and that's what Dr. Odey has been able to establish. But the private sector needs support in terms of tax reduction or tax waiver or whatever that you want to call it. But going forward is that human capital is key, is the cardinal to any economy that want to develop and go forward. I'm talking about reducing poverty. Doctor said it, if you improve the human capital of your people, definitely you are also, in one way or the other, on a greater percentage, you have reduced poverty. Because I heard the federal government saying they want to reduce poverty, telling the IMF meeting, spring meeting in Washington DC, USA, that they want to reduce poverty. But you should also know that reducing and working on human capital is a key to reducing poverty in Nigeria. Dr. Odey,
it's a pleasure
on the show.
It's a pleasure
to bring you back soon.
It's a pleasure.
Passionate with
it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.